Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I am very much an adherent to following all of the BookTube rules. I make little exceptions for myself once in a while. And I think this video may well qualify in that I'm not going to be talking about books. There have been others in which I didn't talk about books. But I feel like rambling on. I just read a piece by Umair Haque titled "The Future is Broke," talking about how whatever dreams we may have once held personally, impersonally, that they are surely not to be achieved within our lifetimes. I will put a link to that. That's really not what I want to talk about, but it runs according to the line of what I've been thinking today, regardless. It's been very warm in Chicago. Not unusually warm, but the heat is qualitatively different than heat as I remember it. These temperatures would, I don't think, be anything unusual. Maybe just the fact that they are occurring in September when they feel more like August temperatures. But I find, even though sometimes we have the air conditioning on in the room, no matter where I am, what I am doing, I feel like I am being cooked, so to speak. You remember the old, I think it's a Chinese tale about all of the frogs in the cooking pot. If you turn up the temperature just ever so slightly, they won't realize what's going on, and they'll go to their deaths unawares. Scientifically, I think it's been verified that that little tale is a folk tale. It's untrue. But it's a good tale as far as humanity. That is indeed how humanity acts often enough. Well, I feel like one of those frogs in that cooking pot wherein the water temperature is being raised ever so slowly, slightly, incrementally. Although it even doesn't seem so slight at this point. I've mentioned a number of times my college friend Marcia. She was slightly older than me and then our poetry group. And so we're talking 40 years ago or so, and she started feeling odd things about the weather. The summers were too hot, and it felt like there was something wrong with the nature of the climate change that she was feeling. And most people just kind of mocked her about it. They thought she was being crazy. I did not. I never mocked her. I don't know what thoughts I held back, but I never said anything, and I think I left it open. Of course, I am very much a person who meets people on their own wavelength, and so I am good at accepting other realities than my own. As I'm becoming older, I'm realizing more and more that that is a skill that a lot of people do not have in our society. But I've come to realize, and she died, I think, 10 years ago now, that, well, number one, the climate science was in existence back then, though she would not have known about it and would not have had access to it, I am sure. But I've realized more than that she was just an extremely sensitive individual, and so she felt it physically in her person. I've credited her with a lot of literary discoveries, James Joyce being one, but I would not stop there. Yet this too is not the topic that I wanted to bring up in this video, and I'm not really sure what it is. The frog in the water is pretty close to it. So Mehdi Hasan has a media organization. I get an email from him regularly, and I got one today. I'll just read a little bit of that. On October 14, 2023, a week after the Hamas attack on Israel, and just days after Joe Biden falsely claimed he had seen photos of beheaded Israeli babies, a 6-year-old Palestinian American boy called Wadi Al-Fayoumi was brutally murdered in his home after being stabbed 26 times. His mother, Hanan Shahin, was also stabbed and left critically injured. Shahin's landlord, 71-year-old Joseph Kasuba, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, and crucially 2 counts of hate crimes. Kasuba, or Zuba, I'm not sure. With all of these names, I'm not sure how to pronounce them correctly. I apologize if I make the wrong pronunciation. Kasuba pleaded not guilty and faces trial later this month. Well, he does not go into detail in the email that I got, but I looked it up. And this man stabbed and murdered the boy of 6 years of age and his mother. He wounded her. She still lives. And I believe Mehdi Hasan has an interview up with the boy's father or something like that. I could be wrong. And when he made the attack, the man said something to the effect that you are Muslim and all Muslims must die. Something like that. I investigated further. His name was spelled Czuba. I thought, oh, that sounds like a Czech name. That kind of makes me nervous. Everything that I saw said, well, Czuba is a Polish name. I don't think that really lets me off the hook. Czech and Polish are very close. And this incident, this stabbing, which happened in Plainfield, Illinois. So it was, October 14 in Plainfield, Illinois. I try not to go to or through Plainfield. It's not a particularly delightful area. When I think of Plainfield, Illinois, I think mostly of a place where tornadoes go. But yet, this occurred less than a year ago. The anniversary will be coming up. And I don't think I ever heard about it. The father in an interview said that he believes the boy was murdered because the assailant or assassin mistakenly thought he was Palestinian. He was not. And we know that the vitriol in the air in this country is frequently very high-pitched. Vitriol, invective, hate spewed, denunciations, and so forth. So there seems to have been a concurrence between the Hamas attacks on Israel and this Polish or Czech man and landlord in Plainfield going off his rocker and committing a heinous and dastardly deed. So, this also was not what I wanted to talk about, but it just came up. I have a friend on Facebook who occasionally will post articles by Caitlin Johnstone. She is not a writer whose writing I particularly care for. And here, let me first draw a line and say, she writes poetry, but I am not talking about her poetry. I have come across her poetry at weird right-wing literary websites, or at least one of them. But I'm not talking about the poetry of Caitlin Johnstone. She, like Umair Haque, who I mentioned earlier, is one of these writers who writes a daily column. And as with him, it can be incredibly tiresome because they wind up saying much the same things over and over and over again. Ad infinitum to the ad infinitum. Or ad nauseum to the ad nauseum. Somebody said, I've had enough of the nauseum, so you can take mine. But I thought that I would read her latest column today. And I will put a link to it in the description box because when I printed it out, I did not print the headline. And I do want to go ahead without giving a break. It was words to the effect that Israel has turned thousands of people into involuntary suicide bombers in the name of fighting terrorism. Something to that effect. That's a line from the article. No, that may be the title. So let me just read that. Israel just turned thousands of Lebanese people into involuntary suicide bombers in the name of fighting terrorism. At least 9 people have been killed and thousands injured in an attack in Lebanon, which reportedly involved pagers packed with explosives being remotely detonated around the country, often in civilian areas. An 8-year-old girl is reportedly among the dead. According to the New York Times, unnamed officials from the U.S. and elsewhere are saying that Israel planted the explosive materials in the pagers before they reached Lebanon after Hezbollah ordered them from a Taiwanese manufacturer. The U.S. is denying any foreknowledge of the attack, but that's what they always do. We're always asked to believe that the U.S. never knew anything about attacks conducted by nations like Israel and Ukraine until they read about it in the news, and that their massive intelligence cartel and sprawling surveillance networks never pick up any information and exist for no reason. This was a terror attack by any possible definition. If Hezbollah had detonated a bunch of devices held by Israeli forces in public spaces without knowing who was near them when they went off, every paper in the Western world would have called it a terror attack. But because it was Israelis targeting Hezbollah, a political party which is part of the Lebanese government and has many civilian members, it's only being called explosions. Hezbollah blames Israel after deadly pager explosions in Lebanon, reads the headline from the BBC. Thousands injured in Lebanon as pagers used by Hezbollah explode, says the Washington Post. Exploding pagers belonging to Hezbollah kill at least 8 and injure more than 2,700 in Lebanon, says NBC News. No condemnations from Western officials, no thoughts and prayers for the victims, no pledges to bring the terrorists to justice. Just the news media going, oh wow, some pagers exploded. Got that, kids? It's only terrorism when the official bad guys do it. When the official good guys do it, it's just giving those bad guys a sorely needed exploding. The unprecedented nature and scale of this attack has raised a lot of concerns from a lot of directions. We all use electronic devices in our daily lives, and weaponizing them at mass scale is naturally going to scare people. If it were iPhones that were leaving the factory with explosives inside, the media would be a hell of a lot faster to cotton on to what a horrific precedent has been set today. Nothing can justify this. It's a crime, and everyone in the world is less safe for it, tweeted NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. What Israel has just done is, via any method, reckless. They blew up countless numbers of people who were driving, meaning cars out of control, shopping, your children are in the stroller standing behind him in the checkout line, etc. Indistinguishable from terrorism, Snowden also said. What strikes me watching all this is how gratuitously creepy it is. Israel is so creepy. Everyone already sees them as rapey, genocidal baby killers. And then they have to go and commit this weird terror attack in the creepiest way possible and freak everyone out to no clear and meaningful strategic gain. They're so creepy they can't stop themselves from always choosing the creepiest course of action. Israel is gross. So that's the article. As I say, I don't care that much for Caitlin Johnstone's writing. There a lot of the literary flourishes are appall me. They are ugly and poorly done. But that said, I mean, concluding the article, Israel is gross. That is needless. And the whole flippancy of, got that, kids? She is obviously appealing to some sort of lowest common denominator form of readership. And so that's fine. I guess it suits the medium. But I don't like it. However, as in that Marianne Moore poem, one does sometimes find in the writing, a place for the genuine. So there are some very good points. The immediate thought that I had was, of course, this was a terror attack by any possible definition. And yet nobody is talking about it, hardly that I can tell. I don't really have my eyes glued to the news, so you can't go by me. You would think I would have heard about something happening in Plainfield less than a year ago, but I didn't. Maybe that shows how out of the loop I am. Anyhow, I wanted to share that article. I think the Umair Haque piece is worth looking at. I will put a link to that in the description, as well as to this piece by Johnstone. Food for thought. The global temperature is rising. And I think the topic of Umair's or Umair Haque's, I really don't know how to say any of these people's names. One of the conclusions to be derived from it, or one of the themes, was that we cannot expect improvement in our lives at this point. The best we can hope for is that it does not get any worse, the global catastrophe. And we know it's going to get worse, regardless. He believes he has 30 years ahead of him left. I certainly don't believe I have 30 years ahead of me. But still, we are already having to start thinking about this. One immediate effect of the global warming, which we have noticed here, is that food spoils a lot quicker. So I eat a certain amount of bread, and it used to be that I would leave it out. Sometimes if it was really warm, I would freeze some of it and then take it out and just have it thawed out freshly every day. But at the rate things are spoiling now, I'm having to put it in the refrigerator. We don't have freezer space for it. It's not the best solution. but it's what we are doing. I just fried up a whole bunch of potatoes because they had, well, a portion of them had liquefied. Potatoes were something that we always just left sitting around, no big deal. And I used some onions, which the batch, some of them had liquefied as well. And this is not something in either case that had been sitting around for months and months. So we are going to have to rethink our food storage options, as well as contingency plans for if the power grid collapses, that kind of thing. If you don't have a refrigerator that you can conveniently put something into. I'm fortunate in that my partner has lived through some hard times and is very resilient, I think, as far as confronting this sort of challenge. I have been sheltered and very much detached from the ways of the world. So I feel, at least in that respect, pretty lucky. But I think the general prognostic that things are not going to be getting better is correct. I know personally, of course, that is also correct. As one ages and one finds oneself more and more subject to physical ailments and mysteries, the writing is only too clearly written on the wall. So, what though before us lies the open grave? So, I wanted to share that piece by Caitlin Johnstone. She invites anybody to share her writing in any form whatsoever. And so I just thought that I would avail myself of that permission. Had the other writer whom I mentioned, Umair Haque, made such a declaration, I possibly would have shared his. As I say, both of these writers are very hit or miss for me. But in both cases, sometimes they do hit upon something true, and even occasionally something prescient or prescient, if that's how you say it. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.